All right, we're back. We are COMP1006. That's Intro to Web Programming, and we are week 9, part 1 of our broadcasts, right? What I want to do is review some of the stuff we've already done from last week. So if I look at last week's code, I'm going to bring up COMP1006. Let's see what we got here. This folder, we have a week 8. We're going to copy this code. Remember we did this last time? I'm just going to duplicate it. So I'm going to copy it and paste it. It's getting bigger. 962 items, right, in this code. Why is it? Oh, I'm copying the whole lesson? What the hell? That's weird. Why is it so big? Oh, yes. I know why. All right, we're going to call this lesson 9. Here's lesson 9. We're also going to get, remember what we normally do, we get rid of the idea folder. We right-click idea and we get rid of it. And we right-click .git and get rid of that too, because we're going to make our new folder out of this one. Okay, so this is lesson 9, right? And I'm going to launch PHP Storm, right? And there it is. And when I launch it, it's going to take me by default into lesson 8, and I'm going to get out of there and launch and just open up a new project in a second. So I want to do a couple things today. One of the things I want to do is we need to restructure a little bit. Platform and plugin updates. Yeah. All right. We'll wait for PHP Storm to start for a second, and I'll click on this little link here. Okay, 6 megs. That's a patch. Let's restart. I don't mind that. And of course, it's looking at lesson 8. I want to look at lesson 9, so I'm going to go, and when this restarts, I'm just going to close it down and look at lesson 9. Yeah. So what I was saying was, I want to look at how do I include files. I want to start doing this thing where I can include a nav bar, right? But I don't want to always program. In Intro to HTML and CSS, we had like a nav bar on every single page, the exact same nav bar over and over and over again. We keep pasting that nav bar over and over again. And that makes no sense. Well, the great thing about PHP and other server-side languages is you can use something called partial files, okay? And the way partial files works are, you have a partial file with part of a HTML file, right? And what I'm doing is I want to import or include that HTML file inside of my other files, right? In that way, I can have the exact same partial file or my code, and I can include the files that I want. There's 2 ways to do this. Okay, first of all, let me just shut this down and start off. And I want you to help me out. I want you to tell me in your mind what's the best way. Don't worry about what's the real best way. I want you to figure out for yourself, what would you do differently? Okay, so I'm going to open up a new project from existing files. And when web server is installed, I'm not going to configure anything. Oh yeah, I got to do this stuff again. I got to change my display settings. I meant to go and change my resolution. I'll be okay. Why isn't this? Here, advanced display settings, sorry. And change this to it's much bigger. We'll go way up here. 1920 by 1200. And we'll keep changes. Thank you very much. And we're going to go in here and click next. And we're going to choose the location, which is C users Tom desktop COMP1006. That's where it's going to be. And we're going to look in lesson 9. We're going to select that as the project root and click finish. Cool. I'm going to shift away and shift back. Back to go. Right? VMware at its best. Oh yeah, that's VMware for you. All right, so we have this file, right? We have our lesson 9. And remember what I did before. The first thing I want to do is I want to start off with, it's doing its nice little indexing job. I want to go to terminal. And then notice on the bottom left-hand corner here, there is a terminal link, right? Which actually is an embedded terminal. I can go into my terminal right for lesson 9. Hey, man. And I can do a git init, a git add dot, right? Which is really cool. Git commit -m, and then initial commit. That's cool. I can do all of that setup right here before I go into my VCS up here, right? Remember that I also want to set up a GitHub repository online using GitHub. And it's not seeing me, but that's fine. I can just log in. And of course, I want to go into Georgian, and I want to create that lesson. New COMP1006, Winter 2017, lesson 9. I want to grab this file, these last 2 files here, these last 2 lines of code, switch back into PHP Storm, and right-click or paste. And can I do that in here? Yeah. Can I even right-click in here? I cannot. That kind of sucks that I can't do that in my terminal window. I wonder if there's probably a way of doing it. Edit. Let's try that again. Copy. Yeah, it won't let me do it. So I'll use the VCS to do that. So I'm going to go into, I want to go into my checkout from version control. Normally it's GitHub, but if I do that, I'm going to create it. Enable version control integration. I'm going to use Git. That's what I want to do. And I want to go to create patch. Yeah. Click on remotes. Click plus. And I can't paste that thing. I need to only paste this part. And paste. Press OK. Press close or OK. And now I can probably do, if I go to git remote, I can see that I have origin, and then git push -u origin master. That'll load everything away. Now I did it here. You don't have to do it here, but I wanted to show you that you can do it right through here. I'm kind of disappointed that you can't do click and paste. There's probably a way of doing that too. All right, the other thing I want you to also see is version control down here. You can actually see the version control system down here, what's been done. And there's little changes you can make right in here, right in your code. Okay. Okay, now that everything's set up, the problem that I have is I have this index.php file. Here's my index.php file, right? Here it is. And then where does all my stuff live? I've kind of organized it now into a few folders. One is the users folder. So anytime I log in through my users folder. I use my login and everything else from it. And I've kind of organized it almost in this other structure. I have my game folder, so I look at all my stuff from my game folder. This is all stuff that happened last week, right? Does everyone remember this? If you didn't, or if you didn't stick around for after when we went to the other class, B230, then we did all this restructuring in the other class. But the biggest problem I have right now is I don't have a nav bar, which is a real pain for me, okay? So I have to actually go in /logout, right? So for me to show you this, again, at the bottom, I'm running my local version of WAMP server, right? If I go to my site here and go to localhost, press enter, And if I scroll down to COMP1006 and I look at lesson 9, I can see that I got this right now. That's where we're at. Okay? What I want to do, right, is I want to have a nav bar. So if I want to log in or log out, I can do that. And it's got to be under users log in, right? Or users log out, right? I should be able to do those things. Users log in, log out. I don't have any kind of way of doing it. I have to remember what the control is. That makes no sense. But I don't want to just add it to every single PHP page. That makes no sense to me. It's almost got to get, I want to use a template. Now there's two ways to do the template. This is where I was going with this. One way, I have my nav bar in a separate file. I have my footer in a separate file. That's one way. And then I have my content, and on the top, I add a nav bar, and at the bottom, I add a footer. That's way one. Here's way number two. In one file, I have a nav bar and a footer, the top and bottom. In the middle, I include the files, the content files that I want to inject into there. So if I have my index.php, my home page, I include my home page in the middle of where my nav bar and my footer already exists. So I have a template, and I include the content of the file that I want in that template over and over again. There's two ways of thinking, right? The challenge with the second way is, how do I select which file it's going to be, right? How do I do that? That's a challenge. Well, I wouldn't, is the answer. I would somehow serve it, I would route it to that file. But PHP doesn't work that way. PHP works the other way, the first way, where you have the top part and the bottom part, and that's going to be your templating. We're going to have our index.php, and the top part is going to be a nav bar, and the bottom part is going to be my footer. Okay? So how do I set that up? First of all, I need a nav bar, right? And notice my index.php is sitting here, right? The other thing I have to note is that I have this part. I have a little bit of code at the top of all of my files. And this is a problem. It's a problem because if I'm going to insert something, just like I included this once, I want to insert something in here. There's two different ways to insert something. I could use the include syntax. I could use the import syntax. What's the difference? Import, right? And will load just like include does. But what happens if I can't find something? There's also require. It's like import, include, and require. And they all kind of do very similar things, right? Require makes it so that you need to load that. Your page will not load unless you get this information. Example would be this. We could actually require my database.php, because without database.php, if I don't have that, my application is shut down. Right? I could do that. And to show you what it looks like this. If I say require, right? I could also do require once, just like I use include, and I could put that same syntax. So /config /database.php, and then if I just get rid of this, or I tag it out, right? So I don't see it anymore. And if I save it, I saved it, right? And if I go back to this page and refresh, still good. Right? No difference. Yeah.
Did you change your database to local?
Yeah. Is it not working for you remote?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's because of the room. It's because of our local. I'm sorry to tell you this, but we're being blocked. Like locally, we're being blocked. So for now, use local, and then when you go home, use remote. When you put your assignments, they should all be remote. The remote link. Okay. So if you look at this scenario, require once is different than include. Include once, whether it fails or not, it's still going to do the rest of the page. Require, the page will not load unless you need it. This is required, right? That's the difference between one and the other. How about import? Can I use that? Well, look what it says here. I can try, right, to import, and I can do one of these. I can import, you know, again, config /database PHP. I can do this too in a different format altogether. And again, if you look at it, how it highlights it, if I hover over, it says undefined constant import. the old way of doing things. If you ever see import, this is what happens. But this is the proper syntax. Either require once or require. By the way, require means it's okay to get it more than one time. Require once means only one time. Don't keep requiring over and over again. So example, if I'm sent back, don't require again. And sometimes when we redirect back to that page, we only want to require once. Okay? Both ways are fine for what we're doing. I'm going to go back to using include so we can see the errors, right? All right, now I want to do the same syntax, but I need to have some kind of partials or views or something that's in here. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go into new folder or directory. And I'm going to call this new folder views. Sorry to give you this word, views, right? But I'm thinking about every page that I'm going to create here as a view, right? By the way, secretly, the underlying motive behind this is because I'm trying to teach you model, view, and controller without actually using those three words. So if you heard model, view, controller just now, just forget about it, right? But really, views is this. We're going to use views as screens or pages. Think about whatever you want to use them as. And we're separating our views, all of our views in here, okay? Except for my index.php. Index.php must be in the main root of the page or else it won't load, okay? So in my views, I could make another folder called partials. Here's my partials. So in my partials folder, I want to have partial files. I want to have a partial header. I want to have a partial navbar. I want to have a partial footer, right? And I'm going to load these into my other parts of my view as components. That's what I want to do. So I want to kind of modularize the way my view is loaded up. Let's do it with my index.php page. But first of all, let's do it with what we have. Notice that I have this doc type, right? My doc type is just HTML, right? When do I really start doing anything with it? When I start getting into my stuff, it's when I go into my container, right? This container part right here. This is where it's really my index.php page. This stuff here, up here, that's not my index.php page. That's something else, right? Now, there is a problem. It says my title is in here, and I want to be able to use my title dynamically, right? I want to kind of inject stuff into my title, and we'll do that later. For now, let's just assume that this title is the same for now. So here's what I'm going to do. In my partials, I'm going to go File, New, File, and it's going to be a PHP file. Remember, everything in our PHP program is PHP. And we're going to call this header.php with a lowercase h. In my PHP file, right? Notice it has a PHP on top. I don't need it to be PHP on top. For now, I'm just going to take it out. What I'm going to transport in there, and just to show you that I can do this, is I'm going to take everything from my doc type down to my body, cut it. So I'm going to kind of Control X. And I'm going to put it inside of my header.php file. Make sense? Now inside my index.php, I want to, yes?
Is there a reason why you include those tags in the body?
Because I want to end with my end tag to the body as well in the footer, right? So my footer, my body tags are going to contain everything. And remember, I can have multiple things I want to include there. So I only want to include, I want never to include my body, because my body's always going to be required, right? So if it's always required, it's always there, then it means I can include it in my template, right? So now what I want to do is I want to do a require or an include, one of the two. So I want to do include, right? But if I do an include, I have to use PHP for this, right? So I go PHP, include, and now there's a couple ways to do the include, remember? I could use include once, right? Or I can use include, doesn't matter which one you use, include once. And remember how we did the include when it came to the information here. I used open bracket, close bracket, this syntax, right? And And again, I'm putting it in its own PHP file, but it doesn't have to be. It could also be part of this PHP file up here because they're just next to each other. I just could continue this, but for now, I'll leave it like where it is right now. Okay, we'll talk about this in a second. So I'm going to include. Now, where am I? I'm in my index. I want to go into views. Right. Inside my views, I want to go into partials. Inside my partials, I want to go into header.php. That's what I'm including. And I want to end this off with a closing tag. Okay, so that's my partials. I'm going to include once this partial. So first I'm going to go to my database, do this kind of stuff, and include this stuff in here. Let's see if it works. One thing to say, it's going to be nice, Tom. Another thing to actually see if it works, Tom. Right? Let's go back. And if I refresh, it's good to go. How do I know it works? Because if I right click here and I go to inspect, and if I look at my element, here's my head. Look, all this stuff here is coming from another file. For us, we can't tell. For us, it looks like it's all part of the same file. What's happening? When I'm including something and I'm using the include syntax in PHP, it's doing a round trip. It's going to the partial file, taking it, taking my index.php, smashing them together, and outputting an HTML file. That's what it's doing at the end of the day, right? Does that make sense? Let's do the same thing for my footer. So we did our header, right? We separated our header. Let's separate our footer now. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. And I have this part. Looks like I'm always going to need JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap, all this stuff, right? And that's why I want to capture the body as well. Right? So I'm going to grab all this stuff. I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to go into a new file, right-click on partials, new, PHP file, and call it footer.php. Include it, and then get rid of all this and paste it. That's my footer. Save. Now inside my index.php, I got to do the same thing. I got to open up a new PHP tag, and I want to go include once, and the path, which is going to be use partials footer.php. Makes sense? Now I got a nicer, much smaller file to work with. Okay? Much smaller file to work with. Great thing is this. All this, right? I can define things like the title. So example, in the header of my file, I can have a header of my file because I'm including it once here. But up here, I have other things I can include. For example, I can do something like this. Title, right, is equal to home. Right? My title. And in my header.php, instead of title being where it is, I can just put in PHP echo $ title. And then why should I be able to do this? I don't see any title up here. Yeah. No. Well, yeah, well, here's what's happening on the index page. The index page, right? If I look at it, I've defined title up here, and then I'm going in here. What's really happening when I include or require, wherever I include my files, I want you to think about it as a balloon. I'm putting my balloon in there, and then I'm going and inflating the balloon. And when it inflates, it includes everything in the line that I've put the include statement. So if I'm right, when I go back to here, right, and I refresh, I should see home as the title. See that? It wasn't home before. It was COMP1006. It changed.
So did you have to put it before you include?
Here's the include. Here's the home. It's got to be before. I got to define it. In fact, what I can do is I can have other includes where I have a set of constants that I define, and I can include them in every file that I want. So I don't have to redefine those constants over and over again. Okay? So files that are specific. These are files up here that are specific to my home page, right? This file is not specific to my home page, and it's got to be below this stuff, right? If I really want to, I can take all this stuff here, and put it inside of another file. And I can separate my logic away from my view altogether. We won't do that today, but I could. All right. Let's get into this a little bit more, okay? So all this stuff still works, right? And I've got a way of seeing everything in my index.php. We're moving away from a single file now, and I want to create a nav bar so I can navigate to other files, right? Well, first of all, I need to know what my nav bar is going to look like. So let's make a new partial called navbar.php. So right-click, new, PHP file, navbar.php. I'm going to include it in my Git repository. My navbar.php is empty right now. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get an example for my navbar. Oops. I'm going to get an example for my navbar from Bootstrap. I don't want to work hard. Bootstrap has a navbar already. So I'm going to go get bootstrap.com. And I'm going to go to CSS. Actually, it's under components. Sorry, components. And if I scroll down all the way from my in my components directory, I can see that I have a navbar. And I have an example of a navbar right here. This is what the navbar might look like, right? It's actually live, and you can play with it right now. What I want to do is I want to grab all this and modify it because it's easier to destroy than to build, right? So instead of having me code everything by hand, it's easier for me to put this in there and remove stuff, is what I'm saying. Let's do it together, guys, because you're going to need to do this on a test at some point, and that would be very bad, right? So I'm going to copy this. So all this stuff comes out, right? I'm going to go back to my code inside my navbar and paste it. And I've got my navbar, right? Here's my navbar. All right, instead of navbar default, I want to make it navbar inverse because I want to make it a black navbar, right? I need container fluid. This is all good. These three icon bars, what they are is that little hamburger that comes on the top of your screen, all right? So if I go back to this, if I was to squeeze this navbar down, right, like this, right, you get a little navbar that wouldn't look like this, right? You would have a little navbar that is a little hamburger on the top left corner, right? And if I go to the top of the screen, this little hamburger right here, that's what those three bars are. Those icon bars are this little hamburger. That's what it's called. Okay, so that's what this part is of the navbar. So I'm going to go back to navbar. Okay. So that's navbar. Navbar brand is, if I want to put a brand image or something like that, this would be my games, you know, my favorite games. I can put that in my favorite games. That's going to be the name of my website. Okay. And my navbar brands, it also has a link. I could send this back to index.php. That's going to be my link. All right, so when I click on that, that's where it goes. Scrolling down, I have something called a navbar collapse, a collapsible section. And I also have a link, a list item, right, with a, I'm just going to take this away so we can have more room. I have a list item with a link, right, that's active. And this is my navbar with a UL. We're using a UL for this. Navbar nav is the UL, unordered list. But I don't want to use this UL. I want to compress it for a second. I'm just going to kind of hide it from you for a second. And the same thing goes with this form. See this form? I don't want to use this form either. So this UL and this form is going to go away. I want to put my navbar to the right. So my navigation links are all going to be the right of my page. That's where I want them to be. So I want to keep this part of the navbar because there's actually three different parts of my navbar. One navbar to the left, a form with a search button, and a navbar to the right. Okay, that's what I want. So I want to put this navbar to the right, but I want to get rid of this. I want to get rid of these two things. Cool. Next. I don't care about this drop down. So this drop down here, right? This drop down, I want to get rid of it. So I'll just get rid of this whole drop down. Cool. Now I'm left with this. This is my nav bar right now. Okay. And I have a single link. This is going to be the home link, the home button, right? And what I want to do here, it's going to point to index.html. Okay. Index.html. Yeah.
Now, how does it work with that being the use partials folder, but it's being called from another folder?
Don't you worry about a tang, Batman. I will show you everything.
Okay.
All right. So this is one index.php. This is wrong. PHP, right? Okay. And the other thing is I want to put a class in here. So my class is going to be blank. But I actually want to be able to go in here and add a class into my list item later on, right? So I want to kind of put a class variable that's in here, right? Depending on the name of the title of my my file, I want to put a class of active, right? So if my active class is on, I mean if it's the active class, I want to kind of put that as active, right? So I want to put some kind of if statement in here. If it's active, my nav bar will show a class of active, right? And if it's not active, right, this link, this class, depending if it's active or not, right? If I'm showing active, if my home page, if it's my home page, right? I want it to show something else. So how can I represent that? It's almost like I got to do a little bit of PHP code, and it's going to look like this. So I want to do PHP, right? And I want to say, I want to echo, but what I'm going to echo here depends on whether or not it's active or not. So if my title, right, is equal to home, all right, if that's true, then what I want to do, that's the then I want to echo active. Otherwise, I want to echo this. And that's what I want to put in there, right? I'm going to take this statement. I want to cut it. And I'm going to put it in here, right? In this part right here. Class is equal to active, right? Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? Okay, let's see what happens. Let's leave that one link. I don't put more links yet. One link, okay? And let's include this whole thing inside of my index.php. If it's working, we're going to be golden. Let's go back to index.php. I'm going to go and underneath my header and before my container, I'm going to put in that link. So it's going to be like this. PHP, include once. And then it's going to be views, partials, and then it's going to be navbar.php. Okay, save. If I did it properly, right? If I did it properly, sorry, I'm just looking to see what that is. It says navbar in Word, typo in Word navbar. No, it's not a typo. If I did it properly, if I go back to here, if I did it, and if I press replace, I get a navbar. And it's active. I get a little box that says that's there. Let me show you what it actually made. If I actually look at it and inspect the navbar, it looks like this. Here's my navbar. It's a navbar inverse, right? Inside my navbar, I have a container fluid. This would actually, it kind of sent in here, right? In my collapse navbar, in my UL, I have a list item that's active. Why is it active? Because my title is home. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. It'd be something else. How did I get that? What the hell did I do there, right? What is this crazy syntax that I just used? Well, it's a big long line, but what I'm really doing is saying this. Hey, I want a class attribute inside my list item, right? And I want to check with PHP to see what the title is that I'm sending in. What's my title variable? What is it? Is it home? If it's home, question mark means take active and echo that. Else, if it's not home, take the empty string and echo that, right? This syntax is called anyone know what it's called? It's actually in C#. You should have learned this in C# or in Java. There's an actual word for it. Come on. Dasha, do you know? It's what?
I don't know how to translate it.
Say it in Russian.
Um,
What is it?
It's
Say it in Russian. Say it in Russian. Ternary operator. That's what it's called. It's the same in every language, right? That's why I asked you to say it. If you know it in Russian, say it in Russian, okay? Ternary operator is what it is. It's actually a construct that exists in C#, C, C++. Most C-influenced languages have this way of doing things. The syntax is like this. Get some kind of conditional statement. Is it equal? Is it greater than or whatever, right? If it's true, return this. If it's false, anything after the colon, return this. Anything after the question mark is true. Anything after the colon, return this. That's what it's called. It's a very common syntax, and I can write it in one line. Otherwise, I'd have to write it like this. If title is equal to home, then return active. Else, return this. That's like 9 lines of code I just did in one line, right? So don't write 9 lines. This is including the curly braces and everything else, right? There's just too much syntax. This way is very, very simple. So use it this way from now on, okay? Now that I've established I can do this, so I can check to see which one it is, when I'm over here in my index.php, I can also use font awesome. Remember, I included font awesome, right? Did I? Let's see if I did. I can't remember. If I go to my header.php, I included bootstrap and font awesome. Right, there's Font Awesome. Font Awesome has custom fonts that I can use, icon fonts that I can include in my header. And I want to put a little home font in there, right? So for me to do that, I'm going to go to my navbar.php, and in front of my home link, I want to put a home font. So I'm going to put an I tag and a closing I tag. Oops. It actually included one for me, and a space. And inside there, I want to put a class of FA-home, FA-large. Right now, if you don't know what that is, it's okay. You don't have to know. I'm going to show you. If you go to Font Awesome, I think it's font-awesome. Well, I'll look at Font Awesome. Yeah. You go to Font Awesome, right? And if you go to icons, and if I search for home, and if I look at this home button, you can see that this is the code that I need to use. I class FA home, and then it gives you the ARIA as well, right? But FA home gives you this little home button that's going to look like what it's going to look like. I'm going to put this right into on my nav bar, a little icon. All right, so if I go back to PHP and save, and if I go back to my link, go over here and refresh, then I get a little home button right here, right? That's what I'm doing. So that's my home link. Okay, cool. I want to do that, right? Now, how about this? What if I'm not logged in? I should be able to detect if I'm logged in or not. If I'm not logged in, it should show me the login link. However, if I'm logged in, it should show me the log out link, right? Log in, log out. How do I do that? First of all, how do I detect if I'm logged in, right? Well, if I click here, add a new game, it's going to take me back to this because I'm redirecting back from what we did last week, right? Okay, let's check this out. Let's check the code that does all this. It's not in my nav bar, it's in my index, right? So in my index, it says, here's my query, my statement, my games, all this kind of stuff is here. And if I want to look at my project, remember that if I want to see my game details, or I want to add a game, So here's my game details. It's going to say this. It's going to say, hey, go to users and check if the user is authenticated. Remember we did this last time, right? So if I go to the users and if I go to is authenticated, I can see that it says this. If is set session is logged in, then cool, go to this header. Go to the users thing if I'm logged in. Right? If I'm not though, if I'm not logged in, it won't go there at all, right? If it's not logged in, if not is set session. So that means if the session is not logged in, if this doesn't exist, redirect me to my login page. Otherwise, continue. Okay, cool. I like that. Well, okay, here's my game details again. So I check that. I go to my database. I get my game ID, right? And I can see that I'm logged in. Well, how about this? When I'm authenticated, when I'm is authenticated is true, right? When this is true. How about my session variable? I want to check to see if my session variable is there, right? And if I'm logged in, I want to be able to have a variable that kind of says it's true, right? My session variable is true. Well, I can check that, right? If is set session is logged in, I can check that again, right? Then I want to put up my login, my log out page, right? Otherwise, I want to show my login page, my login view, right? How do I do that? So I'm going to just copy this thing. But instead of this, if blah, 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 is set, not is set, right, is what I want to use. I copy this thing. I can also use not is set, but is set is a positive. I'd rather use a positive than a negative. I copy this whole thing, copy. I'm going to go back into my nav bar for a second. Here's my nav bar. Okay, I want to create this link, right? And I want to show one link or the other. So I'm going to kind of do one of these. I want to say, okay, go in here. I want to show my link, but only if and only if I'm going to have my if statement. So how do I do that? So I'm going to say, well, PHP if, right, this statement is set session logged in, right? Then, oops, then, and then, and if, right? I want to do those things. Remember, that's the syntax of showing something that when I'm logged in, right? How do I do that? I can do something like this. I can say if it's true that I'm logged in, then I want to show log out. So I'm going to take this whole line. I'm just going to show you this whole thing here so you can see it. I'm going to take this whole link again, copy it, move back to here, right, and paste it. But instead of it being to my title is going to be home, I'm checking to see if my title is log in. I don't have that yet. My login page, right? I'm going to set that to active. My link is going to go to, and by the way, if I'm logged in, I'm going to show log out. That's what it should be actually. So if it's the only way I'm never going to see this link. So I'm never going to be I'm never going to have my class set to log out, right? My class set to log in, yes, but my class set to log out, never. So I'm going to just get rid of all this. So the index for my log out page, right, is going to be users log out .php, and it's going to show log out, right? If I'm logged in, I'm going to show logged out, yeah? How about else? How do I do an else? If and if. How do I do the else in here? Can I just put else? Like that? Is that possible? If, do this, else, do something else? Well, I can't do this, but I can do this, right? Okay. Well, the chances are I can't. And if you look at this little bar here, it says inject language or reference, right? I'm trying to do PHP, and I can't do what I want to do here. Notice that errors, expecting a statement in here. Else doesn't do it. End if, no problem, it works, right? End if, right? I can do that end if kind of syntax because that works perfectly with this, right? But I have to check it again. If it's not set, then it's got to be this, right? Can I do a series of ifs? Can I do, well, if, kind of thing? So if it's not set, right? And to look at the language reference, we're going to look at W3 Schools again. Again, a good reference for overall PHP level 5 or higher, right? And if I look at the conditional statements for PHP, oh, I meant PHP. If I look at the conditional statements for PHP, so here's operators, if, else, if, right? Which is kind of important now to know how to do if, else, if. If, else, if, and end if, right? This is regular conditional stuff. If, da-da-da, then do this. If, else, right? This is the old syntax. If, else, if. And by the way, else if, it looks like this, it kind of combines, right? But what if you want to have, I want the switch statement, and there's other ones here, for loops, functions, arrays, and sorting. How do I do the end if, right? How does that work? And where do I find that? Well, let's just search for it. PHP end if. Alternative control structures for PHP. All right. PHP if, end if. If, else, colon. That's interesting. Else colon, and then end if. Okay, so else colon, else if, colon, and then end if. So you can totally do that, else if and else. We can, but we only have two conditions. If I only had two conditions, then I don't care, right? Well, let me show you what I'm talking about here, right? So you're right. I could do a default else. I could do a case switch and then switch case. But else, what I want to do is I want to switch in the rest of this, right? So where I go PHP and then end if in there. This is where it ends, right? So in my else statement, I don't want to have this condition. It's only one or the other, right? So copy and then put this back in here. And instead of log out, it'll be log in. So I'm going to either show the log in or the log out, but not both. And instead of one, it's going to be log in.php. Now it's not going to be this, right? I think it's sign in and sign out for Font Awesome. Let me see where that is. FA. And if I go log in, it shows sign in. Yeah, sign in. And if I go sign dash in, and if I will go log out, I think it's sign dash out. Yeah. Sign dash in, sign dash out. So if I go back, I can do something like this. I can say, instead of FA home, I can have FA sign dash in, sign out, sorry. Just the log out. And this would be FA sign dash and out. Notice it actually was giving me the language reference. Okay, cool. So I've got that stuff working depending if I'm logged in or not. That's what it's checking. It's checking if I'm logged in. If I am, show log out. Otherwise, show log in. Let's see if that works. So save. What the? Sign out. And this should be sign in. Thank you. I don't know what happened there. Maybe I just typed in the same thing. Okay, go back here and go back out here and refresh. Go back to this page. And now I have my login. See that? If I log in successfully, so let's say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. It'll log me in. Notice now I have a log out. Okay, let's review that again, because I know some people are looking at me going, they're squinty-eyed. They're looking at me with squinty-eyed ways. How the hell did you do that, right? And I got log out, and now it takes me here, right? I want my login page to have my nav bar too, yeah? I want to include my nav bar page here too, right? Well, here's how I did it. I checked to see if my session variable is active. If my session variable is not active, then I know that I need to log in, right? If it's active, I need to log out. That's the only thing I can do. Log in or log out. Okay, makes sense? And I'm switching those two things. Now, for my login page, going back to my login page, because I want to include my nav bar in here too. My login page, if you think about where it is, it sits inside of my login.php. I'm never going to go to my logout page. It's never going to happen. It's just pure code, right? It just logs me out. That's all it does. And then redirects me back to my index.php page, right? But my login page, I will go to. My login page it checks to see if I'm logged in, right? And then it actually renders some stuff. Well, look what it renders. It renders all this. What does this look like? My header, right? So I can include all this because I don't want to copy my code again. I can include my header in here, right? So I can do the same thing. I can go PHP. What the hell? PHP, right? Include once. Then I'm going to go into, now this is interesting because I'm in my user's PHP page. So this is the pathing now we're talking about, right? I'm going to go up one, into views, right? Into partials, right? And then inside header.php. Oh, and yes, that's right. And turn that off, right? So that's where I'm going to get my header. Now notice I'm separating it from this other logic up here because later on I want to take that logic away. This part. Later on, not now. Okay. So views, partials, header is what I'm going to get. Well, if this is true, then I can probably get my PHP include once. Now notice I'm putting them separate lines here. I'm not including them together. /views, partials. Then it's going to be navbar.php. If it's wrong, it's going to show up wrong. Right? And on the bottom, I want to get rid of all this because it's the same as what I had before, and I want to do the same thing. PHP, oops. Right? And then include once. And then it's going to be up one, down into views, into partials, and then we're going to see footer.php. If I did everything correctly, if I did all this right, then my login page is also going to have a footer. All it's going to have is my login logic, and my header and navbar come from somewhere else. Let's see if that works. And by the way, in the header of my PHP file, I probably want to send in a title, right? Which I'm going to put right at the bottom. I say my title is going to be equal to login. Okay. Let's go back and check that out and see if it works. Refresh. Oh man, what the heck? Why did it do this? It's like I lost all my coding. Well, everything's been pushed. The problem is, I got my nav bar. It actually loaded this up, but my CSS is actually in the wrong place, like we said, right? So how do we get to have relative links? Because this is cool and everything else, but in my header, right? That's where the problem is. It's not actually here. It's in my header. In my header, I've got these scripts to my Bootstrap and so on. Is there a way of getting absolute links or absolute pathing, to my scripts and so on, right? For example, if I do something like this, /, will that actually show my scripts and everything else properly in my head of my document, this part? Go back to that and check and refresh. You can see that it does not. And I can see that if I go to inspect, and if I look at console, it says failed to load, responds with blah, blah, blah. That's trying to look for Bootstrap, but it's trying to look for localhost scripts, lib, Bootstrap, this, da, da, da. Right? That's where it's looking. And there is nothing in there to that effect, right? So what else can I do? How can I fix this? Yeah. I could. But if I go up to, what about when I'm in my index page? Yeah, right? So this is okay when I'm here. If I do this up here like this, like you said, right? So I'm gonna go up one. What if I go up? Can I go higher than my root? Am I allowed to do that? So if I do this from here, and I go back to here, and if I refresh my page, then, okay. What happened? I got this stuff, it loads, but my index page is not there anymore. My navigation, if I go to my login page, I'm good, right? But I go back to my home page, right? I got this again, right? And in fact, my links are all wrong, right? Index, it's going to go users index. How do I go to relative path? PHP, relative path. This is where the fun gets started, right? So on the bottom, it says include dir name, dir, right? This is the syntax, right? Where dir is magical, like it says, and returns the directory of the current file without the trailing slash. It's absolute path or whatever you want to call it. There's also root path. You can define that as well to do that. But we need to define some way of going up a step, right? So dir is okay, and then I can find my config.php, and it says the current file without the trailing slash. It's actually an absolute path. You just have to concatenate the file to dir, right? Dir name, dir, and then dot, and then whatever it's going to be, right? And I'm actually moving this, and I'm adding config.php, right, in this particular case. So what does this mean? How do I include that? Because this is the directory name, right? And I got to use a PHP in there for that. That's not really a great answer. So again, relative path require, resolving PHP relative path problem. How do you do that? It's not really a problem. Okay. So again, require once, include, and they get a fatal error because they can't do that. Here's my server document, and then I got my dir name, again, dir name, right, which is my directory name, right? And then whatever the file is, the full path and file name of the script that it is used in. Okay, cool. Dir name file, right? Dir script name PHP, whatever the script name is, right? So this becomes a way of getting this, the way to move forward. Okay. So the way to check this, what this is, if you want to see what these things are, and how do I include that inside of these links here, right? So going back to this, because I'm going to have problems, right? Or either that or I have a second header. That makes no sense, right? Like, so my index.php and anything on the main nav, somehow I don't use the headers, but that doesn't make any sense, right? So go back to navbar links PHP, right? Active navigation bar, right? Okay, this is interesting. Okay, here's this stuff here, and notice you have a question mark, and then they check to see whether it's home. This is kind of messed up. Include this, what this guy's asking you to do, but actually they haven't answered this guy's question here. Make an array. That's not really the right way to do things. I wouldn't do it that way. I'm just looking for a good clean example for you guys so you guys can refer back to it later on. And then they did this class of active stuff, which we did it in one line with PHP, right? So that's no good. Include navbar for every page. da 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 da. And PHP include footer. We did this part. And then the thing is with relative links, which I want to show me the relative links here. And that they don't show any links. Yay, fantastic. That's not really a great navbar example. Okay. And they did this whole thing that I did, see class of active. That's exactly what I kind of did. But that doesn't really do it for me. So let me show you this. Let me try by debugging. We'll do that and we'll take a short break after this, okay? So how do I debug this stuff? Remember that I have complete control over this, right? So when I include a PHP file, I can always print out the dir name, right? Just to show you this, I could say something like this. So PHP, and then I can include or get the include path, right? Or get the path. Notice that there's different things here. Get include path. Hits. If I look at path, right? There's get the include path. Let's look at this. Get the include path, and I want to echo that. Right? So I want to kind of do echo, get the include path. Right? And that's going to be when I go to my header.php. Bear with me for a second when we do this exercise. All right, back to this. Refresh. C:\php pair. Is that going to help me? That's not going to help me. C:\php pair. That's incorrect, right? But see where it's getting me. It's actually returning information about my path, right? I want to do that funky dir name stuff, right? But I want to do it in the right way. Let's go back to that link that we showed here. So go back a couple steps. Include navbar in every page technique. No, that's not the one. What did I put in here? Navbar links, and I went to another one. No. Oh, he did this file stuff. No, I didn't want to do that. Which one was it? This one. Include relative path. This part. Dir name, dir. Right? So let's try that. So at the top of my PHP page, I want to say echo dir name, right? And then underscore underscore dir. I want to kind of print that out. So I want to see what that does. You can see it together. I'll go here and refresh. C: users, Tom, desktop, COMP1006, COMP1006, well, W2017, lesson 9, views. So that's where I'm at, views, right? So what I want to go is I want to go to there plus my login page or my partials page. That's where I want to go, right? Or my page that I want to go on. I want to concatenate those two things. That's what it's basically showing us. So it's absolute path, right? Whatever the path is that you're going to do. Now, question for you. Would this work on Azure? May not, right? Because it's going to C:, there's no C: on Azure. This is absolute path, C: /user. So what would you do? How would you do it?
So now here I use the direct the main name and the main page. And then /
and the absolute path, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it. That would be the easiest way. So what he's saying is, whatever my link is, so whatever it is, .azurewebsites.net, put that in there, is what you're saying. And then you just put that in there. You're done. Yeah, you're finished. You're finished, right? So that doesn't make any sense, right? What else? How else could we do this? Because this is the problem, right? I mean, it works for one stuff, but one thing, but it doesn't work for the other thing. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll have the answer.